Well, thank you. Any questions, members of the board, at this time? And then we will actually, we need to put some motion on the floor as far as the next steps, as far as the process that we'll be handling for the September 9th meeting. But questions at this time?
Yeah, I have a question.
Chair recognizes Trustee Zia.
So I noticed that the last meeting, this is just very minor, but I think it's noteworthy to add the public comments because the other two meetings reflected the public's input. I know we had some on August 22nd. If that's possible, I think quite a number of people came and spoke. That's one comment. And the other question I had, did you want to respond to that, Doug, or did you?
Sure. If it doesn't say it in there, the only thing I can say in my defense is that we tried to write that in a very short period of time afterwards. In fact, I think between the end of the meeting, about 6 o'clock, and distribution to everybody by 7 o'clock. So there were people that came, there were a lot of people that testified, and that should be duly noted. Thanks.
Okay, great. And by the way, you did a fantastic job. So I just want to commend you for doing a great job, and also the committee. The question I have is more on the process of ranking in the interviews and what happens if we have a 2-1-1 situation, like 2 members vote for an individual, another 2 members on our board vote for others. Are we going to discuss that via this forum, or should we handle it differently?
And let me, because that really gets into, again, this information is so we have people, reports come out that what the ad hoc committee has done, tremendous amount of effort, outreach, by the results, 13 qualified candidates. But more importantly for us at this meeting, we need to set in place what we're going to do at the September 9th meeting to address this. And your point is on, and the question I have really for discussion, so we can start to develop some type of motion that we can all agree upon. I personally would like to see us, we are going to give everyone the opportunity to speak. All 13 members will have the opportunity to speak to us. We will probably have some questions go back and forth with those 13 members. But at that point in time, after they've had that opportunity, we need to get this list down to a manageable number. How we get that is, I think, the point you're trying to get to. I would just say that I would like to, after the discussions with the candidates on our September 9th meeting, is to get it down to a list of 3, 4, 5 that we can then look more seriously at. I would personally, and I'll just express this, I don't want to sit there and rank 1 through 13, because I think that's somewhat insulting to all quality people to be suddenly, they may be 12th, 13th in my list. Does not mean they're good people. But what I would rather like to do, and so for discussion, I would like to find a way that I have the ability to list what I believe would be the top 3, 4, 5, or 6. And how we can do that is what I would like to get more, that's one area that I'd like to have for tonight's discussion. So we can, at that meeting, at our next meeting, is really start to focus on, after the 13 candidates have the opportunity to get down to a finalist list, with being sensitive to all the people that have applied. So my personal preference, however we want to talk about it, and the challenge for everyone in the audience, we have to do this in a public forum, so we have to work through it in this way, instead of trying to find a process and coming and giving you, the committee came up with some ideas, but that would be my personal preference, is that if I had the opportunity to list, however we do it, to where I would personally list, where I would say would be the top 3, 4, 5 maximum candidates. That's what I would like to do. Now, to get how we do that is another question. So I think we're talking about the same thing.
Are you proposing to have 1 through 5, like rank the individuals, or just the top 5?
I'll just express what I personally would like to do. After I have the 13 individuals speak, I would then write down what I believe would be my top 3 or 4, whatever we feel, and then compare that to everyone else's top 3 or 4 or whatever number we agree upon. And if we can find some consensus, those would then be the finalists that we then move forward with. That would be my preference. How we make that work, I know Trustee Otto has looked at things along those lines on how we can make that actually a formal process, but that would be my preference. So that's how I would like to go about it. I think we're just trying to manage this in a very professional way. And again, I'm very sensitive to the fact that these people have all applied, and they're probably all very qualified. This is almost like a reality show that somebody is going to have an opportunity to sit in this seat come September 9th. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but there'll be no rows on here, but it's pretty darn close to that process, I think. So that's my preference. If you have any other ideas, feel free.
President Kellogg,
Trustee Baxter.
yeah, before we start into this, I want to add my thanks to the committee. I know they worked very, very hard under a very tight deadline. I particularly want to thank Trustee Otto because he spent a great deal of his personal time pulling this together, and I appreciate Mr. Gaylord, Superintendent President Oakley, Mr. Root, and Ms. Kane.
All right, so we're at that point, and Trustee Otto, I know you had some.
Are there anybody else?
David
Want to say anything?
David, anything at this time besides thank you for putting the time into it? So if, well, I'll recognize Trustee Otto. If we want to put a motion, a general motion that we can begin to really start to discuss in more detail.
Yeah. Since last Friday night, I thought and looked and tried to figure out what the most fair, open, transparent way would be to do this. And I think that it would improve upon the recommendations of the committee if we did the following. First, I agree entirely that the entire board should interview all of the candidates in open session. In fact, I think that's required by the Ralph M. Brown Act. And that as the conclusion of those interviews, that a break be taken and that the finalists be worked on. Now, what I mean by that is, I'm sorry, the first step is this. The first step is that the candidates should be randomized for purposes of interviews. So not in alphabetical order, not in order of applications being filed, but we ought to randomize all of the names and then go through the interviews in that process. Secondly, we interview all of the applicants in order, and that each of the trustees be asked to individually rate in private, meaning not in a discussion or not publicly in order, because I think that would affect the randomness of it as well, what their preferences are as follows, and this is a little tricky. It's called a plurality system. If your candidate number one to be interviewed, and we have the great earthquake, and you've been interviewed, then you're number one. And everybody else gets killed in the building, then you're the new trustee, I guess. Because the second person who's interviewed is then either number one or number two. Number two can supplant number one or not. Number three can supplant number one or two. Number four can supplant numbers 3, 2, or 1. And the decision about that is up to each individual trustee. And you go through that process all the way to the bottom of the total number of applications. And then what happens is you take a break and you add up the scores, and the lowest numbers are your 3 finalists with this caveat. If you're talking about the difference between 4 or even 5 or I don't know, of 1 point or something like that, I think you interview all of them. Not all 13 of them or 12 of them or whatever it is, but you interview those that are close, and you can make a decision about that in public that is good, I think. That those people then be declared to be finalists. That at that point, what happens is that because by my expectations and calculations, that's about a 4-hour meeting already. And personally, I don't want to make a decision about who it's going to be unless it's transparent. And I doubt that it is, because I've read the applications and there are lots of good candidates. That what should happen is that we should, and we already on our agenda tonight, have a special meeting scheduled for what I would propose to be the 11th of September. 2 days later, we can come up with a process for that that is very similar to this, additional questions, additional interviewing, and at that point, take the finalists and make a decision about who the provisional trustee for Area 2 will be. People are more rested, they have a chance to think. Now, as a background to all of that, I'll repeat what I said that I couldn't say about everybody in the public, but I can say I recommend to the Board of Trustees. And that is, going forward from today, the trustees are not to contact candidates, nor are candidates to contact trustees. And trustees are not to accept contacts from those lobbying for any particular candidate. All information concerning any candidate is to be received by the board in open session. So I think that doing that cleans up a lot of the mischief that can go on in the process. And I think that what it does is provide an open process so the public gets to see everything that we do, that it is transparent in the sense that, well, also you can see what we're doing and you know what the rules are ahead of time. It is as fair as it can possibly be because we're trying to get as much bias out of it by randomization, by not allowing these kinds of contact, by getting through the list with a more, or I won't say objective, it's a subjective thing, but it's a process that tries to weed out the biases that can come from people making statements here on the stage that might influence somebody else. So one thing that I didn't say is that we would request, although I don't think we can require because it's an open meeting, but we would request that all of the candidates on the 9th remain outside the room while the interviews are being done by every other candidate. And that's so that you can't listen to other people's answers. If you're later, you might get lucky in terms of getting some information. Now, I can't do any more than recommend that. I can just tell you what my personal feeling would be if a candidate or a bunch of candidates were to decide to sit in, how I'd feel about those candidates, but you can imagine. So that's another a check on the bias that could possibly happen. The process would then be concluded on the 11th of September, and the provisional Area 2 trustee would be appointed on that day. I'm happy to listen to what anybody else has got to say. I can't say that this is anything more than my best thinking. I've talked to some people with experience in elections. I talked to somebody in the city clerk's office in Long Beach who does this all the time. I talk to people on this campus who understand statistics and the approach to things and also the way that these things might be done. And I assure you that I am acutely aware how important it is for this process to be open, transparent, and fair. And that's what I'm trying to do by this recommendation.
I have a question.
Chair
Trustee
recognizes Trustee Zia, and then I'm going to try to put something together for a motion, or at least potentially a motion to discuss. Trustee Zia?
Vice President Otto, I just want to make sure I understand. So essentially, we're going to a moratorium period between now and the time that we make a selection, correct? So that it's like the anti-lobbying clause that is not in writing, but if I understand correctly.
Yes. I recommend that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. The question I have is, can we do reference checks and ask community members and independently verify the information presented to us? I would certainly invite us to do that and invest the time if we want to, but I'm open to ideas. And lastly, I was under the impression that the second meeting, potential meeting for the interviews was September 12th, not 11th at 4 p.m. And I requested the time off. So I just want to make sure I have an understanding of the time.
The problem was that On the 12th, the president is going to be out of town, and it's a college weekend for one of his kids. And so I just said, okay, I'll make the recommendation to do that. We can talk about it to your work. I mean, they're all in the evening.
Unless it's after 6 o'clock.
Oh, it's after 6. All of these all of these meetings will be in the evening. I'm sorry, I should have said that, so that everybody has an opportunity to attend, everybody has an opportunity to speak, and they can be much more open-ended, for better or for worse.
Because originally it was at 4 p.m. on Friday the 12th, so.
Okay, I didn't see the 4 p.m., I'm sorry.
That's all right, that's fine.
Jackie will be fired as a result.
Oh, no. We wouldn't want that. So
Believe me, we could not get along without Jackie.
the other question I have is, what happens in a situation if we have a tie? And how are we going to address that? Do we keep going? And I just want to make sure I understand. Are we independently scoring? Are we being sequestered and taking a break and independently scoring and then coming back?
No, we are, in the proposal that I'm making, everybody scores at the same time right after the interview has been conducted. Nobody's talking to anybody, nobody's trading chits, nobody's talking about what they liked and what they don't like. And that as a result of that process, we get our mathematician or our statistician to add up the scores, and that gives us who the finalists are.
And will we have a time limit per candidate of 15 minutes still, or are we going to go over?
That was in the resolution, and I'd love for it to be less. I'm not sure we can do it. I'll remind people what we have. We have 11 questions on the applications that everybody filled out. I must say a lot of them were not that dissimilar, so differentiating candidates is not going to be an easy task. But that's background information, because we have 7 proposed questions that were supposed to be asked of all of the candidates to keep it as uniform as possible. To be honest with you, I have a little bit of a problem not only with that, but with the questions themselves. Not all of them, but my sense is that those could be fine-tuned. And the reason for that is because they were done way back when we initially talked about this process. The only important thing would be that the candidates have ample time to consider the questions that they might be asked at the meeting, and I think that you certainly could do that if they had a week or something, some way to do that. And I mean, I've thought of the idea of this board appointing a committee of 2, which you can't have more than 2, or be a violation of the Brown Act, to work on those sort of in-between questions. It's impossible to address everything, but in terms of the evaluation of the application questions, in terms of whether the questions are adequate, whether the questions are complete, whether they need to be reformed, if you could just fine-tune that a little bit. I don't think that you want to give any authority at all to change the process to any committee, because then it doesn't appear to be open, then it doesn't appear to be transparent, and it probably doesn't even appear to be fair. But you may need to tweak some things along the way to keep it that way, and so that's a suggestion that I make, that one way to help it stay on track.
So why can I, and let me ask this question on September 11th, because it actually, I thought the Parents' Weekend was another weekend. If the September 11th is a Thursday, if September 10th works better, but the problem with that is we're getting right up against the previous night. So we want to give at least some gap in between. So that's where we came up with September 11th, and my apologies on that. So let me at least...
Jeff, excuse me. There's a Hall of Fame reception on the 10th?
On the 11th.
On the 11th.
At what time?
At 5 o'clock.
Well, where this
Okay, we'll
meeting
just
will start
schedule
at
the meeting at midnight.
Okay.
This meeting will start at 6. And
I'm worried about one day. I'm worried about one day not only for purposes of it being a very short period of time, but assuming Jackie will still be working for us, the amount of work that,
Well, and just for discussion, I asked the question, what happens if when we go through, and I'm going to try my best now to frame a motion for everyone to really formally discuss. My question was, what if that in the 13 candidates, after we review, everyone has rated, we've all rated an individual number one? Why are we then going any farther if that's the case? So that was a question I brought up, but then it's really, I'm looking at it more at this meeting, is that I obviously will have a number one, but I'm really looking at who would be my top three. It may be so close, it may be 1A, 1B, and 1C, but I did ask that question, and we still felt it needed to have, and Trustee Otto did address it, that we still want to have a little extra time, because this is a very important decision and one that does not happen that often, and for all of us that went through campaigns, for all the 13 candidates, you will never get an opportunity where you only have to convince 3 human beings that you get to be an elected official. It doesn't happen unless this process. So I'm sensitive to that, very sensitive to that.
if I may, what concerns me about just saying, well, we got 4 number ones, what's the problem? We'll just appoint that person, is that I might say, I'm going to rate this person number one, but it's so close to number two that I could rate them both number one, but I can't do that. So what I'm going to do is rate it number two, but I'm still on the fence about it. So I'm trying to make it as transparent as possible, and I think that's why there should be a subsequent meeting.
So I'm going to and listen carefully on this. This is going to be the motion that will be voted on by the board. What the recommendation is to, one, Superintendent President to verify the data of all 13 applicants prior to the September 9th meeting. Number two, that all applicants will be
Excuse me, and you mean the legal requirements?
the legal requirements.
Isn't that already verified? Because that was the committee's recommendation.
And I don't think from Friday night until this morning they were able to do it. I think they're working on it. I mean, you got to get everybody's address and find out whether they live in the district. Just ask State Senator Rod Wright or City Councilman Alarcon, whether that's an easy question to answer.
So the first one is the superintendent to verify the legal data of all applicants prior to the September 9th meeting. The next one will be recommended. I'm going to leave this one. I'm going to move on because it's a recommendation. All applicants, number two, all applicants to be interviewed at the September 9th meeting, order to be randomly chosen, each candidate to be given 5 minutes to address the board, followed by question and answers, members of the board. However long that goes, we'll have to dictate, but each individual will be given 5 minutes to speak, address the board.
Was that an or? Did you say or randomly interview? Was it an and?
The randomization occurs first.
But I think he said an
Yeah,
or.
so we're going to randomly select who, so again, because I think Jackie is writing, all applicants to be interviewed at September 9th meeting, ordered to be randomly, what word, okay, established, and then each candidate or applicant to have 5 minutes to address the board, followed by questions from members of the Board of Trustees. Number three,
And will they be asked these 7 questions?
well, I'm getting to that, hold on.
Okay, sorry.
Number three, all applicants are to be rated by each trustee, and then all of the scores will be calculated by, and I'm going to say a name just because it gives you probably, Eva, you're here, but we're going to incorporate you from our institutional research that you will then incorporate all of the 4 Board of Trustees scores for all 13 applicants. And then
I'm sorry, who's that?
Eva,
Oh.
Institutional effectiveness.
institutional effectiveness. I had to put a name, and Jackie is doing a lot, and so all applicants will be rated by each individual trustee,
Privately.
privately, correct? So,
Sorry, Jeff. Rated as an equal rating of top 3 or ranking 1 through 3?
I'm going to put it this way. It'll be ranking all applicants to establish the top 3 candidates from each board member. Is that clear? So we will be ranking 1 through 13 essentially.
Okay.
But what we will have then is the top 3. If there is some wiggle room where there's some ties, we will not have up on the board, you'll start to see ratings of number 1, number 2, number 3, then somebody jumped. We will take a tally, and then we'll turn it to our institutional research person. They will calculate all of them. So again, so for Jackie's purposes, because you're gonna have to repeat this to me and everyone else, because I just want to flush this one out. So all applicants to be rated by each trustee privately. Then it'll be calculated by Eva, and then reported out. The top 3.
What'd you say, 4?
Plus
Top
ties?
Yeah.
3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Say 4.
3, 4, or 3 to 5. There we go. And then leave that at that. Then the top 3 to 5 to return to our September 11th meeting at 6 p.m. for final questions. Then the next bullet, or what am I, number 4, a subcommittee of the Board of Trustees. And I'll do now because it has to be only 2, and I'll ask Doug Otto and Trustee Baxter to come up with some questions, talking to people. So the next one will be a subcommittee of the Board of Trustees that will be Trustee Otto and Baxter to develop questions to be utilized at the September 11th meeting.
And talking to people, what do you mean talking to people? Talking to
That's
the
why I
trustees?
didn't add that. Don't put that in there. I started to say it and it doesn't
Well,
look.
I have a question on that. How are they going to come up with the questions?
I think we'll meet.
They will meet and establish some criteria questions.
Okay.
We have to have some process, and that's why.
I
So
understand, but I just want to make sure
I
it's
I
just
didn't want to put that
inside
in
of-
there because that could be very general, and they could talk to a person someone getting it at Starbucks. So, and then a finalist or a individual be selected at that meeting. Then the request was, and this is where I stopped, it is recommended that there will be no communications between trustees and applicants and/or their advocates or supporters between now and the selection of an individual. We can request this, and I don't want to put this as part of the motion because it did come up. At the meeting, I can request that the individuals, but that gets into a whole other problem, so that's why I didn't include that. A request is just that. At the meeting on September 9th and 11th, I can ask if the individuals please stand outside. But in all fairness, they can turn and say no, or let's face it, it's pretty easy to say, somebody sit in here, then walk out and tell what's going on. So it's a nice request, but there's no real legal footing that we can stand on. So that said, now, can you repeat that back to me?
Sorry, before we go there, Jeff, at your last point, you mentioned the applicants and their advocates. So are you, because I think Doug's recommendation was the applicants themselves. My question was doing an independent verification of references that they've provided, which is essentially their advocates. Are you suggesting we shouldn't do that either?
I will only tell you, I will not, because it'll make my life a lot simpler. Everyone in the world is going to start calling on behalf of a candidate, and it's our decision. So that's why I said this is really only a recommendation.
Excuse me, President Kellogg. They gave 3 references.
Yeah.
Who's
They each
they?
the candidates.
Yeah, we asked for it.
Number 11.
Do you have an objection if we check on the 3 people that they put on their application?
I actually felt that was going to fall under with the superintendent president coming back and verifying that the 3 recommendations are actually recommendations on behalf of those
Okay.
individuals.
That's-
That's what I was looking at.
And I'd ask that the superintendent president personally make those phone calls.
That's a lot of phone calls.
I just think that's an administrative burden on our staff, and if we're going to admit, if we should, I would like to have that option to independently verify, and I don't think we should exclude trustees not to make phone calls. I understand with the applicants, but I would certainly want to trust and verify the information.
So it only falls under recommendation. From the ad hoc, they were talking about the importance of that.
Okay.
I can't stop anybody from taking a phone call from somebody. But I think it would be wise if we're not careful, because you're going to start hearing a lot of ways.
How about this? What if we had any of the 4 trustees could contact any of the 3 recommendations? I initially thought, I dismissed that idea because I thought, imagine if I said, sure, I'd support you, and then all of a sudden they started receiving bunches of different phone calls from people. But with only 4 trustees, that's not too bad. So, but I'd limit it to those individuals and not go out and just calling people that know them in the community. And the reason for that is I think the fairness of the process is undermined if what happens is there's a lot of information that one trustee has that another trustee doesn't have. And so you try and keep it within the interviews, within the answers to questions on the questionnaires, and to information that everybody is gathering, as opposed to just random information that somebody says, well, you didn't know that guy won the high jump in the Olympics in 1994.
I agree completely.
So, again, it's recommendations. So in this, as it'll be read back to us, and hopefully then we can make a motion, there will just be the recommendation that we do not communicate with the applicants, and I'll leave it at that with everything else to make it simpler. Because in all fairness, you can, this gamemanship can go on and on. It can be somebody calling on behalf of an applicant and so on. And the reality is we have to find somebody who will represent the area too in a positive way. So the recommendation, eliminate that language there, just that the trustees it's recommended the trustees do not communicate directly with the applicants.
And are we going to have a process for the public to be
Sorry?
heard? Are we going to have a process in perhaps memorialized in this motion, a process where the public can speak on behalf of a candidate? Are we going to contemplate that as well? 'Cause
It goes without saying. These are public meetings governed by the Brown Act, and at every single public meeting, all members that want to talk can talk.
Limited to 3 minutes, or should we
Yeah,
go that
and
detail?
I'm only,
Yes,
because
that's
I'm
subject
already
to
watching
discussion.
the minds work. If I'm an applicant, I'm bringing everybody, family, friends, somebody that knew me in high school, and they're coming to that podium. And I really, my approach is they're all qualified, they all have supporters. I would really personally discourage that. Unless you want to have, because then it becomes a situation, well, they're going to bring 20 people, why don't you bring 20 people? And we don't have enough room, and I would. The fact is that this is a political office. So I hear what you're saying. We can't stop that. But I will tell you, probably, if somebody throws that scenario and I look out, I will say that each individual will have 5 minutes to speak, as we reflected in this motion, personally speak. But we'll put a limit on the number. We will be speaking as well as members of the board, if there are people in the audience then, but we're going to have to put some limitations on it, because just start working out the numbers.
Board President Kellogg, we will, unless you change the way we handle the agenda, we would need to handle it as the public speaking on agendized items and
Which is
all the
30 minutes.
limitations that exist there.
Yeah.
So that's the way it would be approached under the current policy.
Can we limit the number of people that can speak under the Brown Act?
You can limit based on the subject.
Yeah.
What is the limit?
Well, we have as a policy here, it is 30 minutes per item, or is it 20 minutes per item?
20.
20 minutes per item. You can tell right away with 13 applicants. So it does, that's why your point is well taken. I would really discourage people from doing that. This is about individual candidates, applicants, but if they show up, that's how we'll address it. And so to be fair, it means that there'll probably be very little opportunity for supporters to come to that podium and speak on behalf of an applicant.
And I think it's 20 minutes per subject. So the question is, what's a subject?
Yeah,
Is it-
that was my next question. And do we? I think that's a little bit limiting because 20 minutes. The subject is an appointment of.
Or the subject could be the appointment of this particular person to that position. I can see somebody interpreting it that way, so that everybody, all 13 of them could have 20 minutes. We would be here until past the deadline on the 13th. But,
So I will, just so people, so they don't suddenly start recruiting all their friends and neighbors, there will be limitations on public comments as well in my capacity as the chair.
So it wouldn't be the number of people, it would be the number of minutes then. So somebody can come and speak for 30 seconds, they're out, they can bring 50 people, and then if they're within the 20 minutes, they're fine.
And I can tell you though, by being in this room where a large crowd of people that are passionate on an issue, it puts a tremendous burden on the chair to tell people.
Well, we signed up for this position
I-
gladly, so we should give them the opportunity.
It's just
to be
not,
heard.
it's not really that important. So, I mean, we can sit there and make this a political rally, but we have to be very careful.
And let me just make the point about what we're talking about here. If the applicants hadn't filled out questionnaires, and if the applicants didn't submit to a relatively lengthy personal statement about what it is that they were interested in on this board and wanted to do, and then some people come up and say things about the person, I'm gonna be surprised that we're gonna learn a whole lot that's new. So I don't want this to be, I mean, I can personally say that I am not gonna count the number of people that come up and talk on somebody's behalf as a basis for my making a decision about whether that person should become the provisional trustee. Every once in a blue moon, you learn something additional, but by and large, having sat through a lot of these kinds of meetings, what happens is people say things about a certain subject that somebody else is about to say again, or, and I'm not saying that this in any way a limitation, I'm just saying that personally, I'll take all the testimony that comes in, but it's not persuasive for people to repeat themselves.
And I was probably looking at it more along the lines of suddenly you have certain advocacy groups standing up at the podium saying, we endorse the following candidates, which they have the right to do, but it can get a little tricky, and that's the only reason why we mention it. But at this time, could you then, was I fairly able to bring
gonna
everyone's
do
comments
my
down?
best to read
Go ahead and give it a shot.
The
because
chicken
that's-
scratch here.
That's all right, that's mine too.
Okay, number one is that the superintendent will verify the legal data of each applicant. Number two, all applicants will be interviewed at September 9th in a random order. They will be allowed a 5-minute introduction of themselves, followed by questions from the board. Number three, all applicants are to be rated by each trustee privately. All scores will be calculated by the assistance of Eva Bagg, Institutional Effectiveness, Dean. The top 3 to 5 ranks will be reported out and followed by an interview at the September 9th meeting. I'm sorry, not September 9th. Is it September 9th?
It was September 11th.
11th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Number 4, subcommittee of Board of Trustees will include 2 members. Board President Kellogg has appointed Member Otto, or Vice President Otto, and Member Baxter to develop questions to be asked of the applicants, and the individual to be selected, and that's not what I'm following, the individual to be selected at that meeting. I'm not sure what that.
The applicant, the final
The final
finalist will be
at that meeting
an individual to represent Area 2 will be selected at that time.
will be selected at that meeting, yes. Okay, and I don't know if this is number 5 or part of that, but no communications are to be allowed between Board of Trustees and the
Yeah,
applicants.
it is recommended.
It's recommended. And the
Or their supporters, I wrote.
No.
No, we
Okay,
we
just
didn't
the
want to,
applicant.
we didn't get into that.
Okay.
Please don't
And
contact
I'm
me.
not sure if this is a number 5 or just a comment about setting some limitations on public speakers.